Hello, welcome to Kung Fu Having number 2. I'm James Williams Jr. The difference between a horror movie and a scary movie can be as simple as a blinking of an eye. In a horror movie, you generally do see breast. In a science fiction movie, depending on the content, you also see breast or somebody in a skin-tight bodysuit that represents the future. Right? Also depends on what country the movie originates from. Because a lot of science fiction movies and kung fu movies, a lot of science fiction movies have martial arts in it. A lot of scary movies also have martial arts in it. But mostly there's an element of evil in both of them. In science fiction, when the element of evil, it's generally just a dude or it's an alien of some sort that's coming to kick the holy hell out of the human race. And we all have to band together, like Predators and all that other stuff. You can't really say it wasn't a science fiction movie, but it was kind of a horror movie at the same time. Except for, Arnold doesn't do horror movies yet. He has done a horror movie. The End of Days could technically be considered a horror movie because he fought Gabriel Byrd, who was the devil. But anyway, horror movies is generally made to make you jump. And most of them have that jump factor. And that jump factor always gets you when you least expect it. Science fiction movies also have that jump factor. But generally in a science fiction movie, when that jump factor, they give you the factor where it's literally like you're either going to jump off of something or you get that feeling of falling and you're going to go down and you're not going to survive the fall. But, scary movies have that same effect. And both of them, if you put them together, you have a horror scary movie and a science fiction movie, and you combine them, you have a hell of a freaking thing to go with. And, the other Predators have been basically more sci-fi scary, where, the first Predator was just sci-fi. It wasn't as scary. And the same thing with Aliens. The first Aliens was sci-fi, and the second one, the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, they were more sci-fi scary, and then they kind of went back to sci-fi. Then when you combined them, they were mostly sci-fi scary. Depending on what you consider scary and what you consider sci-fi. But most of the time, whenever you watch something that's science fiction, it generally has something to deal with future or aliens. And you can Google this. I'm sorry, I had a skin on my lip. I need chapstick. Anyway, you can get past me picking the skin off my lip. I could get past picking the skin off my lip. You understand that when you are watching a science fiction movie, something as cute and cuddly as Gizmo can become something horribly evil if you feed it after midnight or you get them wet. That would be Gremlins, in case you guys are old enough to remember that movie. Now, if you're watching Gremlins, it weighs in on that science fiction scary. Where if you're watching Alien or something, it's just straight science fiction, but it has scary moments in it. Now, when we're talking scary movies, most of us prefer to the old school. Damn it. Sorry. Most of us refer to the old school. Jason cut him up. Freddy cut him up. Rawhead Rex was a science fiction scary movie from Ireland or England. And what the hell was the other one? Pumpkinhead. You got Freddy, you got Jason, you got Michael Myers. These guys are basically deranged serial killers, which makes it a scary movie because it's like a reality type scary movie. You have Candyman, which is a scary movie. Basically it was Bloody Mary just with a man. All of these movies have something in common. They all have the jump factor. They're all a little scary. They're all a little science fiction. Because most of the time, supernatural stuff you find in science fiction and scary movies. And each one of them have an element of mystical or spiritual creatures and powers and stuff like that. So, how do you tell the difference? To be honest, you kind of can't. Because sometimes a science fiction movie is a horror movie based in the future. And sometimes a horror movie is a science fiction movie based in the present. And the main way that I can tell you that you can tell them apart is that story content. If the guy in the movie is just going around killing people with no probable cause other than the fact that he has a bloodlust, it's mostly a scary movie or a slasher movie or a thriller. Where if people are killing because they're getting attacked by aliens, you kill aliens in science fiction movies. Sometimes you kill people who get in your way while you're trying to kill aliens. As for the movie with The Rock called Doom, you know, sometimes the aliens are the good guys, and sometimes the bad guys are human. And if you remember Starship Troopers, if you're old enough to only remember the first one with Casper Van Dien, I haven't seen the third one, so I can't give you any knowledge about that. I can give you the second one because my girl Sandrine Holt's in there. I have the monstrous celebrity crush on her. But anyway, if you can remember that most of these movies that are science fiction, you're not really fighting a human as your antagonist. Where if you're in a horror movie, you are rarely fighting a humanoid creature, except for like Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, and stuff like that. But if you're in a horror movie where you're fighting like a supernatural creature, like a Bigfoot or something in that nature, or some alien that's running free and stuff like that, or Star Kid, which was a science fiction movie where he fought all kinds of things, or The Guyver, where he fought all kinds of things, or anything else in battling stuff that isn't human in origin. Basically, it's a science fiction movie. But science fiction and horror, they walk a thin gray line, and sometimes the line does this. It's not always a straight line. So it's really all about what you consider what. A lot of people don't know the difference, and there is a small difference. It's like a pinhole size small difference. So it really varies on which genre you like most. I personally am more of a horror guy than a science fiction guy. But to be honest, if I have to be completely honest, I love them both the same. Because there are some movies that are just badass and they're horror films. And there are some movies that are badass and they're science fiction films. Now, if you want to ask me which country makes the best horror films, I'm going to have to go that it is a tie for me, and only me, my only opinion. This only affects me, it doesn't affect anybody else who's watching. My favorite horror movies come out of Asia. And the reason why I use Asia instead of the two countries that I prefer to use, I haven't really seen a Chinese horror film, but I have seen a Korean horror film, and I've seen Japanese horror films. You probably have seen them too. You've probably only seen the American version. Pulse, One Missed Phone Call, Ring, and Ju-On. One Missed Phone Call kept the same title for the American version. Ring-O was the Japanese version of The Ring. Both of those Japanese versions were a little bit better to me than the Chinese versions. I mean, the American version, excuse me. Ju-On is The Grudge. And both Ju-Ons, for me, were a little bit complex because I had to read it like 4 times to get what the hell was going on. I liked it just a little bit more than I liked The Grudge. Just a little bit. But then The Grudge had 2 more films, and I don't think Ju-On had a second one. And if it did, I haven't seen it. So there's that. But I've seen a lot of Asian horror films that just fucking blows my mind. And I think that they would actually work here if we actually could translate it into English and have English actors doing it. And when I say English actors, I don't mean non-Asian English actors. I mean English actors of all ethnicities and backgrounds and cultures and stuff like that. And as we go on, if you ever notice that a lot of the science fiction or horror movies, there's always some negative stuff. And I'm not saying that it's negative for you guys. I'm saying it's negative for me. When I was watching Exist earlier today, the only dude that makes it out of the movie was a weed smoker. Funny how that worked out. But in a lot of movies, somebody's either alcoholic or a druggie on some sort or another. Even when it goes back to RoboCop 2, with Nick Stahl as a kid with a machine gun in his briefcase, he was on Nuke. I think that was the name of the drug, where they squeeze the things. I don't remember if they squeezed it up their nose, but whatever they did, they injected themselves with drugs. So, seems like either horror and sci-fi have an issue with we're never going to fight and win the war on drugs, especially if they're still in the movies. But, that's just a side note. But most of the time, whenever I watch a horror film, I check the bylines. Because a lot of the horror films, Dark Water with Jennifer Connelly, the Japanese version was better. Also, found out that was slightly based on some true shit. With the girl floating in the water tank. Now, I don't know if that happened before the movie was made or after the movie was made, both versions, but they did find a woman in the water tank, drowned face down. They don't know why she did it, but in certain Asian cultures, suicide is an honorable death. Where in American culture, and if you go by biblical standings, suicide is a sin. So everybody has their own little spin on that, and you guys can have it. I don't care. I don't know. I don't want to get into that because suicide is an issue that I have had to deal with quite a few times. So when you're watching these horror films and things, you gotta weigh which ones you like. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you haven't seen an Asian horror film or an Asian sci-fi film, the best one that I can point you in the direction of, because the only one that I can remember, because there was only one white guy in there and he bites the bullet big time. It's called The Host. You can watch The Host. That shit will make you want to watch more Asian films. Now, I did watch one Asian film, and I don't remember. It's just like Paranormal Activities, and I guess it might have been Paranormal Activities, just the Asian version of it, and it was fucking awesome. The ending was fucking awesome. You guys should check it out. There are a lot of horror channels on YouTube where you can watch all these horror films and stuff, and there was one I watched with some girl who moved into a building, and the building, whenever a family leaves, a new family came in, but the family that left was generally killed. So this girl and her father moved in, and she was scared of monsters, but the monster was really her father. He was doing bad things to her, and so she made a deal with the spirit, or whatever, that if it killed her father, she would stay in the building for the rest of her natural life, or whatever. And after she found the body or whatever. But they had this line that whoever lived in the building had to be over that line by a certain time, or the ghost would kill them. And so they made it, and at the end of the movie, they moved the line so that the girl gave the ghost to her father so that everyone else could move out. Now, I don't know the name of that movie. If you guys know the name of the movie, text it to me in the blocks below, because I want to see it again. I'd like to actually own that movie. Another movie that I seen that was an Asian movie was something about the train ride. And no, don't be mistaking it with the Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper. This is like a totally different concept, because this was a train bound for heaven or hell, and there was a guy and a girl trapped on it, and then they went on this awesome ass adventure on the train. And the movie's like an hour and a half long, so you have to really be able to read fast and then watch it, and then read it and watch it at the same time, and you'll understand what the hell's going on, because it's all in subtitles. And it's another movie that I think would work fine here. There's a lot of Asian movies. If you don't have a knack for Asian stuff, you won't really understand them, and you may have to watch it or read it 2 or 3 times, because it's the same thing when I read House of Flying Daggers and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I read it the first time when I watched it, and then I watched it the second time all the way through. And then I read it again when I watched it the third time to make sure I was clear on everything. I know you guys are thinking, why did you have to watch this thing 3 times? I just said, I'm not Asian. I can't understand the language. Although, now that Rosetta Stone is here, if I can find one that I can afford, I will understand the language. But it was fairly decent. It was good movies. But, with a lot of kung fu movies, they kind of borderline on the science fiction realm, and they've always been kind of science fiction with people like flying through the air and everything. But hey, it is what it is. But a lot of things are just like in these elements of these movies where you have to figure out what does what and what is what. So with a lot of the movies, for me, like I said, I prefer horror, but I'm running on that smooth tie between horror and science fiction. But the truth be told, I prefer the Asian versions better than the American versions. And the end of Pulse, the American version, I kind of forgot. I know it had the girl from Veronica Mars in it. And in the Asian version, the ending was like, it was bad. It wasn't like, not like bad as in bad, but it was bad as in it didn't end very well for humanity. So, and it's the same thing. All right, for those who don't know, if you've ever played the game Resident Evil, it was created by Capcom, but the guy who wrote the story and everything was Japanese. So if you read the bylines, you'll understand all that stuff. This is why reading is very important. Because you need to know how to read things. Because reading makes you intel in your brain work a little bit better. It gets the wheels turning. So, I don't think the Japanese have made a Resident Evil movie, and if they had, I haven't found it yet. But anyway, with the American version of Resident Evil, the movies are great, the games are great, but the movies deviate from the game with the introduction of Milla Jovovich's character of Alice. So the movies deviate really far from the game because the last one you get to see Ada, and you get to see Leon, and you get Jill in the one before that, and you get Chris in the one before that, or the two before that, and then you have Claire. And Claire's been in more than Chris and Jill and Leon. So, I guess it all depends on whatever the producers are going to have, and hopefully they're going to have all the main characters from the game in the last movie, which is coming this year coming up. So, because that would be awesome if they did that. But if you remember the end of the first couple of games, when they liquidated Raccoon City and when they did these other things, and when Leon went off and became a special agent for the President of the United States and saved his daughter, and all kinds of other stuff. If you remember any of these, then you'll know that they do find a cure for these zombies or whatever. But for the T virus and whatnot. So I don't know if the movies are gonna follow suit with that. Now I'm gonna make a second part of this video because this is 17 minutes of your life that you can't get back. I'm James Williams Sr. Sci-Fi Movie number 2. You see it.